and restart here. So looks like technical difficulties on the transmission. So we'll restart the Town of Wenham Select Board Workshop of 20 January. Commence here at 10:13. In attendance, Gary Cheeseman,
Diane Buka.
Peter Clay, and staff Catherine Tinsley is recording secretary. So we'll start again with the Town of Wenham classification and compensation study. The town had contract provide this, which lays out in detail the percentiles of neighboring towns and so forth. And I'll turn it back over to Steve for a recap of the short topic that we've talked about so far.
Yep, so this is something that was contracted about a number of years ago. It kind of picked up when I started. So what was it? We had a consultant called GovHR who specializes in classification and compensation studies across the whole country, and they have a very large footprint in the state of Massachusetts. And what they do is they come up with a list of peer communities based on government structure, government type, budget size, population size, parcel count, and other economic and demographic factors. And from that, they establish essentially a benchmark to create salary ranges for like positions in the 50th and 75th percentile of the peer communities. And in this study, we're doing it in two parts. This is the first phase of the study. This is all non-union personnel plus the library. The other unions will be, that process will be started less than 12 months out for the next budget cycle. So in this, it created internal equity to ensure that all employees' roles and responsibilities are taken into account, and that everybody is compensated fairly and equitably across the organization. And also looking at overall salary ranges compared to the peer communities to make sure that they're being compensated at a rate that's competitive to the market. The select board has talked a few times. We've had updates on this. The general salary range that has been suggested by GovHR and talked about at select board meetings is the 75th percentile. Both Topsfield and I believe Bedford going through the same process with the same consultant. And we share a number of comparable communities. They're also selecting the 70 or 75th percentile. So we feel that it's important for the town of Wenham to be, a little bit above the median as far as salary ranges go, and also to keep in mind that geographically we're surrounded by larger communities that were not part of our peer community list and pay significantly more. So for employee attraction and retention, we want to at least be in the top 3/4 of the hiring ranges in peer communities.
So one of the points we made was each of the current employees had inputs describing their own positions and what actual work they accomplished above and beyond the job description. So this should be a more comprehensive look at actually what the workload accomplished in town hall, how it should be compensated compared to our peer communities. And I think looking at the study, we found that the majority of the positions fell within our expected range already. So Steve, you want to go over the few that were on the limits?
Yep. So as I said, a large majority fell within the limits. And just to add a little, each individual who filled the roles had a lot of involvement in this process. There was, we submitted the current most recent job description for each position. Each person who fills that role currently filled out a several page questionnaire and could provide narratives on how they felt their job differed from the job description to make sure we covered all responsibilities that they're currently. And then a staff from the GovHR spent between 30 and 45 minutes if appropriate, with each person interviewing them and talking them through their daily responsibilities. So we really tried to, make sure we covered everything and it wasn't just looking at job descriptions and coming up with a grading system. And then they have I believe it's a 7 or 10 point grading system where they take all the data back that they've gathered through those three avenues and come and grade each position, and then the total score based on that grading determines where you fall in the internal equity grading outline. And we do have, all that said, after benchmarking against our community, peer communities, we have a small handful of library workers who fall below the salary range. I believe it's within the $2,000 to $3,000 range. So the recommendation at a future meeting would be to move those individuals to the starting point of the range. And we also have a couple of individuals who fall outside the range on the higher end. So, caveat to that is, and it likely was recognized by Wenham years ago when these positions were made, it's called contract employees. So the individual contracts that define their benefits. And these positions are generally positions that have, larger swings in the marketplace from year to year or every couple of years. And having the built-in tract allows the municipality to be quick in making adjustments at a position level only in order to, whether it's maintain, attract talent, if that position was to become vacant or someone was thinking of leaving. And that's.
Questions, Diane?
I don't know.
Peter? So I think going forward, the next steps then are, we'll take at a future meeting after we do the deep dive, especially on those outlier positions, to take a vote to implement this as a standard in our employment. And then to adjust the salaries so we get everybody within the normal range. What actions, and the other thing we had spoken of is having received this process, that we need to annually update the numbers so that we adjust the regular salary adjustments into the brackets, so that our brackets stay up to date as we go forward. You want to explain RSAs?
What the
Regular, yes, regular.
schedule adjustments, yeah, so it would be built into the policy, the personnel bylaw, and it's once and if this grading structure is adopted, these pay structures, the regular compensation adjustment, or otherwise known as COLA, would be implemented into the range of each grade, so that the whole hiring range moves essentially, let's call it a market adjustment, assuming that other communities are applying a 2% adjustment, so that we stay competitive every year, so that we don't have to kind of do this yearly, and then it can be like a once every 5-year process where we go back and then peg ourselves to peer communities and see where they're. And it also, and then that will also allow the board to make adjustments, right? So if we get to a situation where we're trying to hire for a treasure collector, and the range we've been out to market twice and we just cannot attract anybody, it may be time to relook at that grade, those positions, and see what the market, and you can make adjustments based on that. And then to the extent that there is appetite for a merit pay in addition to a regular cost of living adjustment, that would essentially be the progression through the range. So the whole range moves by the percentage of the cost of living. And then if there is a merit applies hypothetically 1%, if you hired in somewhere in the midpoint of the range, now that 1% is your progression towards the top of the range. To the, you may never get to the top, you may end up a little bit above the top, but that's kind of the logic.
All right,
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
all right, so there's moving on the compensation study going forward, so I think that it was basically good news. We're pretty well where we should be. And we have a process moving forward to make sure that we do stay in that range, because as we know, the pandemic era was kind of squirrely as far as hiring and so forth, but now I think that, looking at the numbers from 12 peer communities, we're right in there and we should be competitive in the marketplace for hiring, but more particularly in retention as well.
Mhm. Great.
All right, next subject. So we'll change the slide to regular salary adjustment for COLA,
Yeah.
as we're learning
Yeah,
here.
pay adjustments, so. Yes, this is really just, with talking with the vendor, doing my own research. Just to give the board an idea where other communities are falling, not just our peer communities, but surrounding communities. Generally, in this climate, you are seeing regular adjustments in the range of 2 to 3%. This year, Wenham has selected a 2% for budgetary purposes. So that is in the range of what other communities are doing.
So we've been pretty standard in the 2% range. And I think we just need to look that last couple of years have been aberrant years as far as the marketplace. So hopefully over the next year or two, we can continue to get the market data in, so to see if the whole marketplace, statewide or countrywide is stabilizing out. So I think for next year, the 2% range should keep us competitive. So we do not need any formal change to the employment handbook as far as target percentages.
No, I don't
No.
think, so. I think that would be a case by case, because I mean, you want to maintain the flexibility that. In a tough year to
Yeah,
go
might
to
not.
zero, I
Right.
hate to say it, but that is an option that the select board has. All right, and this is that range progression that I was alluding to earlier, is really based on talking to my colleagues and talking with the representatives at GovHR. Primarily two models are implemented to our merit incentive and in the traditional step scale that you see, you hire the person at step 1 and they have 2 to 3%. This is on top of a COLA. You have to keep that in the back of your mind. A defined progression through that salary range based on steps. And once you get to the top step, so say it's an annual step, you got 9 steps. So you're hired at step 1, and on your 9th year, you're step 9, and then you're no longer eligible for any additional increase. So, that's the pros to that from the employee's perspective, is you get greater increases from year to year, but then there is no incentive on the out years. When you have something like a merit where it's tied to your performance. From an employer's standpoint, it's less flexible in the hiring range, so you may have a hiring range that's appropriate between the first and last step, but a lot of times you'll get stuck hiring to the first step. And so you don't really have the flexibility, because the internal equity in the step scale is that if you're hired, you're hired at step 1, and you might be able to get the person to come over. You can hire in the midpoint, but it's, then it's not fair, because everyone's been hired at step 1. Now you're bringing someone in at step 4. So that's, that can make it difficult. And then as far as budgetarily with the merit, you can decide to, we just can't offer the merit this year. Finances don't allow it. With the step scale, it's kind of built into the bylaws, so you'd have to amend the bylaw to essentially disallow the step in that year. So it's a little less flexible. The merit incentive, more flexibility. You can make it what you want every year. You can have, a 4% merit in 1 year, and you make it a 0% merit the next year. It's all based on budgetary constraints. So you have flexibility in that. And it's, it's also performance based, so to the extent that it, drives folks to do a little bit more each year. You have that there.
Well, certainly the traditional steps are usually used in large organizations. So, makes the HR paperwork easy. You just progress up
This is where
through.
you start. This
This
is
way,
where,
whereas, in a small town like Wenham here, where the staff that is pretty much one person in one specialty doing that job without peers or, others, that certainly we have the opportunity to, continue with a merit incentive program so that we can reward those individuals that outperform.
Yeah.
And knowing that, we certainly have a good staff, but we have, always the budget limitations. As Steve said, the merit program allows us greater flexibility.
Yep.
Comments, Peter,
I'm definitely on the merit side.
right? And you've got a career of corporate pay experience behind you to
Well, the
Thank
fact that after 9 years on the step scale, you can't get a raise, that's insane.
but that's a hypothetical. You could have 15 years, you could have 20 years.
But even so, then it's
Yeah.
not based on their performance. So
Yeah,
it's just
right.
like, you could do nothing and still keep getting those raises and someone could be working, 200% of their effort and just getting the same step. It's, I like the merit better. I like what people
Much better.
work for. Yeah.
So that is the current system we're operating under,
Yeah.
so that we're essentially saying a no change to what- going
Yeah.
forward.
Well, the change would be. Right now, we're doing like a retro pay back to June 1, so essentially the merit, whether it was intentional or not by original design, we don't know.
Goes
This
backwards.
loss, it's
Backwards,
essentially a
yeah.
double adjustment, so if you get the 2% merit, you get 2%. Check of 2% of your salary, and then you get 2% adjustment to your base going forward. Which isn't a bad thing, but it's just not sustainable. So we're looking to go, traditionally, and I've talked to a ton of communities. And what they do is the merit, your past year's performance kind of establishes your new salary going forward. So if you had a bang out year, the top of the merit adjustment was 3%. And your new salary starting on the start of the fiscal year will be reflective of that 3% increase. In there, it's not, you're not looking back in time.
So, but you still get the two, you get the merit and the COLA.
Yeah, right, so we're talking, right,
Regular,
just so.
yeah.
The regular adjustment is done. Community wide,
Mhm.
and then the merit is where, there's the flexibility where
Right.
if you have a tough year, you can't do merit this year, or we can do.
But it's all done at the same time.
Yeah, so
as
you could
opposed
say
to
like
right
a-
now, we're having them do it.
Yeah,
two
we wanna, so you would be like, all right, we wanna budget 1% for merit next year. So it's no longer, these merits don't live in the departmental budgets anymore. It becomes a merit pool line item.
Okay,
So it would be like, okay, this year, we want to do a 2% regular adjustment, but we want to budget 1% for merit. And so it doesn't mean everybody's getting 1%, what
Right.
that does is now you have a bell curve of performance. And you have some people getting 1, you have some people getting theory 1, theory 0. In theory, a bunch of people are getting 0.5%. So, to the extent that there's that much,
Mhm.
in my experience, generally, almost everybody falls like right in the middle there, so you spread it out. So if you have the 1%, and you can pay the 1% and everybody gets about the 1%, but it gives you the flexibility to do that.
Anything else, Peter?
Nope.
Diana?
So do other communities, I mean, I know the traditional step scale, when I was teacher, that's what we use, but like, do other municipalities use the step?
Oh, yeah,
They do.
yep,
Larger communities.
yeah, no, not even larger, I mean, it's all over the map.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, I
That's what
mean,
we do.
there's pros and cons, because sometimes communities see the value in just being, when you start, you're here. They don't really do performance evaluations and, you make the, it's just easy, hands-off
Okay, yeah.
HR. I'm not saying it's the right way to go, but I'm just saying you can be some value in that is, you want the job, this is where you start, this is where you end up. Everybody knows it going in, exactly where you're gonna be in 9 years. You know what I mean? And you take that job and you're happy, it's all open.
Okay,
With the
Sweet.
merit, there's some variability in that, knowing that you may never get to the top end of the range, or you may end up exceeding the top end of the range. It's kind of, but it gives the town flexibility. I think
More
as
seen in the
well.
private sector, merit pay.
With bonuses and stuff, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's usually,
All right. Next subject. So, watch the news and the pandemic, certainly there's, work from home and so forth started, but, a lot of other work conditions are coming into play. So you want to go over some ideas here, Steve?
yeah, so I'll start this off with a story that I share. So when I was in Marblehead, this wasn't very long ago, we're coming out of the pandemic. And we were hiring for a financial analyst, which we were able to pay very competitively, about $70,000. We're looking to hire somebody right out of college or out of grad school that wanted, basically the succession planning to be a finance director. And we had a lot of qualified candidates apply for the job, probably about 7. When they found out that the interviews were going to be in person, 4 dropped out. 3 we interviewed. 3 we interviewed at the final. We went with our selection. Our first selection, and they found out that the job didn't have any remote capabilities. They declined the offer and were no longer interested in the position. Person that the runner-up, we offered the position, he took the position. And in 2 months left for a job that was remote, had remote flexibility. So that's just the story I like to share about, a job that you're paying very well. It was very competitive for basically a job with no experience. And not having the ability to offer alternative work options like this can be difficult. So I know I've had long discussions with Joellen, who's the director of the GovHR, and she says, in this environment, you want to be competitive in pay, but it's, she's saying that it's almost more important to be competitive in your ability to tailor your employees, like tailor your work-life balance to your employees, realizing that they have commitments outside of work, they have families, they have childcare, they have issues. So the extent you can be flexible on some things really goes a long way, because you get the people being like, well, I could do the same thing in Danvers for 10 grand more. But Danvers does have a work from home policy and all that, but hypothetically, I gotta come in every day, or I can't, if I got a, refrigerator being delivered, I gotta take half a day of personal time instead of being like, get permission to just work from home and, to take any personal time. So I guess, that is nice. And the other parts of that are condensed work week, which we'll go into more on later. Staggered work hours and job flexibility. So the state employs this. They've done for probably about 20 years. It's been successful for them. And now you're seeing a lot of communities adopting this as well. Where you have essentially your work day is from, I'm just going to say, we can go ahead and change the slide and we'll start talking about the flex time. So what this is you start your day. Our work day is 7 to 6. So we got, flexibility for the public to call in, get answers. I'm not saying this would work, but you work with the individuals. And, everybody has to be in between 9 and 3:30 or 4. That's your core, or you got to be available. And then if that person's schedule, lends itself better to coming in at 7 and finishing at 3:30, then, allowing that, because they're within the core and they're coming in early and staffing, and then the same on the other side. So it's really getting the same amount of hours a day, but you're building in the flexibility, all while offering improved customer service, because the day is now longer than what it was. So, town hall, contact hours, you don't necessarily open town hall, but have someone available for contact could be 50 hours a week, where it was 40 before. But town hall is still, people still working the 40 hours, just but now you're providing 50 hours of service.
Like that? Yeah, yes, no, and I think the key point, as you said, it gives individual employees the flexibility to, make appointments, deliveries in the morning or, medical appointments or whatever, or, the soccer games, whatever, in the afternoon that you would like to attend, that would provide
Yeah.
each employee. And the other thing I think too is, knowing that almost all of our positions are just one deep,
Right.
that having the flexible hours, and as we saw on the other slide, a little bit of job sharing or overflow back and forth, it provides the community the expertise on a wider range time, at least as far as making contacts. So, an office upstairs doesn't have to put out a sign-up sheet that says, gone, but, sign up here, I'll get back to you. In this way, we'd always have coverage. As you said, on the longer hours. Do we have slides for some of the other
Yep.
times? All right.
So I mean, that's one option about, workplace flexibility. This other one is, and we actually employ this somewhat now. We do, unofficially allow some working from home, so this would be kind of moving towards a more formal process, more formal policy. Again, it's not working from home, like the recommendation wouldn't be working from home every day of the week, or, even working from home one day a week. It would be, a case by case basis. At least that's how I'm envisioning it to start, where, a couple days a week, if depending on what you got going on, if it's easier to work from home, especially that now we're moving to a web-based web-based telephone product, so that you'll receive all your calls no matter where you are. So you can take your phone home with you if you want, just plug it into your internet connection. You can have it forwarded to your cell phone. So I could be skiing on Friday and have someone call the select board's office and on the chairlift, like we talked the other day, and just pick it up and just be like you're in the office. I mean, it's a joke, but so, but you know what I mean? So we have it, we're building in technologies that enables that flexibility, so that customer service is, if anything, increased because of your availability, you're just that much more accessible.
So I just had two concerns.
Yep.
Sometimes what happens, and I think this is gonna happen a lot with the younger generation with all this work from home and making your own schedule, is you're gonna lose the office camaraderie, and learning to work with people and that kind of thing. So that's just one concern that I don't want to lose, because I think,
Yeah,
I like when people work together and help each other and work and know what everybody's doing. And then they all feel as if they're all working equal hours. Sometimes when people are working from home, like, are they really working? I'm here working and they're, whatever. And the other thing is, I'm not sure what you just said. We're all mostly one person offices. So if we did the flex time, I'm not quite sure how the office would be covered more.
Well, the contact aspect of the office would be covered more, in that we'd have people in here at 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. theoretically, as opposed to
Right, 9 to
9
4,
9 to 4.
but say, so. the
You might not
assessments-
get to
let's-
that particular office,
well,
no,
I
but
think-
you'd have a
Right, not every,
contact.
you'd have a contact,
Yeah.
but not an office
Yeah.
specific.
and something
Okay.
I think to keep in mind is I share those two concerns, and let's be realistic, a lot of us are an office of one.
Yeah.
We are a service organization, we provide a service, and we're expected to be in town hall to provide that service. And I don't think that's gonna change, so the extent that we can employ this on a level that is, like a Google, where people live in Alaska and work in California
Mhm.
and have never been in the corporate office for 10 years, is just not
It's not.
the
It's not
case.
us.
It's more
Yeah.
like a coordinate with your boss. Make sure there's coverage, built-in flexibility on certain days, like we got, finance has a couple people in there, so. Say Belinda needs to pick up her kids at 3. Janet doesn't like to get out of bed until 9. Like I'm just, right, I'm making
Right.
jokes here, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah, I know.
so it's like, well, I'd rather come in early. It's quiet. I can
Yeah.
crank through 2 hours of the day,
Get the
and
time
then
done.
still get my kids at 3:30. And you get to sleep in till 9 and come in at 10 and work till 6. It's like,
Yeah.
it kind of, it's a win-win in a situation like that.
Yes.
But is
Yeah.
it gonna work in every situation? No. Are we gonna be able to go remote all week or even a day or two a
One a
week?
day.
No. But to have that flexibility to do it here
It's a
and
good
there,
flexibility,
I
yes.
think that would be nice.
Yeah,
think it's
employees
a-
would know that it's contingent upon the town administrator's
Right.
approval discretion.
Right.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to voice the.
Yeah, I share those
The other side.
concerns.
So, I'm working on a startup
Mhm.
for like last 8 years, we have 15 employees. We have no office
Everyone works their own spot.
and they're all over the country and they're mostly women. And women love it because of the flexibility.
Yes,
If you're young and you got kids, or if you're older and you're looking after your parents. They love
and
it.
you miss the whole office thing, like going out after work or just meeting other
Yeah.
people.
And certainly that's,
Yeah.
that's an important aspect, especially on the retention side, that you can need to like the people that you're
Right.
working with, and you can have positive motivation there. So I think, what we're looking at here is the exception to the rule, really, but having it in place, so as appropriate or on a case-by-case basis, we could utilize it, or the town administrator would be
I
authorized
think
to.
it's great to bring.
go
it.
ahead
I do,
with it.
yeah.
And I mean, it's great for morale, it's great for retention, because now when you post for the jobs, you can be like, you always gotta post the salary range, but then, we offer, work from home policy, flex time, going into condensed work week next. You wanna switch the,
I like this one.
Yeah, so my son, Jack, and his girlfriend who moved back from California at the end of September. They both have jobs in Boston. Sometimes they go, sometimes they don't. It's the way it works.
Mm,
And I think you gotta recognize too, there's a generational shift
yes,
that really was lit
Yes.
off by the pandemic.
that's why I use
changed
that
it.
example, because it's kids out of school.
Yeah.
So these are like the new wave of, if you don't offer this stuff,
they're
it's
not
like,
interested.
not even
Yeah, I
interested.
know.
Yeah, so Becca, Jack's girlfriend, when they moved to California, Liberty Mutual,
Everywhere.
and she worked from San Francisco.
Awesome.
All right,
Crazy, yeah,
next,
Yeah,
next aspect we're looking at is a condensed work week without hour reduction.
Yep. So this is, without reading the slide word for word, it's basically, I'll call it what it is. It's going from being open 5 days a week to 4 days a week. Town hall open hours would increase by the 4 hours that we would have been open on Friday. So hourly employees there would be no hour reduction. And, basically this is something that Joe here went out and pulled all the communities in the state and from the people that we could get to reply to us, 46. Minimum of 46 communities have adopted this 4-day work week with within the packet online. If people at home want to take a look. And in front of you, we have the survey results, basically we left room in the survey for comments by the community and glowing results as far as employee attraction, retention, morale, and customer service. There's some anecdotal quotes in there, and I've actually noticed the same, that the people generally Fridays are very quiet as far as foot traffic. Just before we started this meeting, I asked everyone how many phone calls and people have they seen so far today. We've had no phone calls and no foot traffic so far today in town hall on a Friday. And we looked at the last several weeks and our foot traffic and phone calls by department range from the 0 to 3 range. So, and anecdotally, when my fob didn't work for 2 weeks, so I used to stand out front and wait for Jamie to come open the door for me, because I didn't have a key. I would see more people in the 15 minutes I stood outside at 8:30 in their car asking me what time town hall opens, so they could come in to do their business on Monday through Thursday. So again, not statistically accurate, but I think that that's a case that it actually would provide a better service by being open earlier in the morning. So people can get out, do their business while they're out dropping their kids off at school, not have to come home and come back at night.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just.
Yes.
Real quick, this survey also is not just smaller towns, for instance, cities, I believe Everett is on the list. Out of Western Mass, East Hampton, Massachusetts, I'm not sure what the population in Swampscott is, but.
Yeah.
25.
Yeah, so it's not just smaller towns. that
Yeah,
are-
well, yeah, Malden, I think Malden, Everett, Winthrop, Chelsea. Brookline have all adopted this. And those are communities of, I think, 60,000 and more. So they're large, very large communities, metropolitan communities. So yeah, it's not just the small stuff. I know that Danvers. Is going through this process internally right now. Peabody is having talks of doing this process. Swampscott just did it. So, to remain competitive in the marketplace, it's kind of, it's going that way. And on top of it, to the extent you can quantify it. It will reduce utility costs.
Yeah.
To what extent that, I'm not an energy
At
master,
least
but
a little, yeah.
you don't have to heat the building envelope, from 55 or whatever our nighttime temperature is to 74. To shut it off after 4 hours, the whole building cool again. That cycle would be taken out, and then you reduce your carbon footprint. All one by reducing that utility usage, and two by employing people that, you have to, instead of doing 5 commutes a week,
Mhm.
burning 5, you do reduce your fossil fuel consumption by 20% for your employees.
And certainly too, over the years, as we've gone to a mail-in billing process too, I think most people now, due to the pandemic and generational shift, are just used to water bill online, electric bill, whatever. And for us, we have a finance counter, but relatively little used when you look at the whole population. And certainly, I don't think it's going to have a major impact, given that those few that still like to walk in,
They just do it another day.
their bill still have 4 days a week
Mhm.
to accomplish that task without running up the bills for us of having the town hall open and not really being used by the public. So if we want to do this, we would at a future meeting, set up a motion to formally change the town hall hours.
Yep.
And then we'd also, we would have to, this really eventually changes the everybody's work schedules as well.
Yeah, so that's the other piece of it. I've gone and personally talked one-on-one with every individual in the building, because I wasn't even gonna present this if there was 100% buy-in, because it's just not right to force someone, and there's 110% buy-in amongst the employees that currently work in town hall. Very enthusiastic.
So,
My first day, I had maybe 3 people come up to me and said, "We're talking about going 4 days, like, what do you think about that?" So I
I've
mean,
been
it's,
to it for years. That's great. Let's do that.
So in that other town, are they thinking about it too?
So Manchester is closed to the public on Fridays.
Alright.
We work 40 hours a week. And we can, fit it in. So most of us work remote
Okay.
at some point to make our 40 hours, because the building's only open 35 and a half.
Do they have a scheduled late night as well?
We do 6:30 on Thursday.
Mm.
So most of us usually stay late, 6:30, might as well just stay till 7 at that point. Most of you come in a half hour
Mm.
or so early that way, and then you do your boring computer stuff from home on Friday.
and there was a few administrators that Joe quoted that mentioned that you weren't required to come in on Friday, but they did find some staff was using the building.
Oh.
They wouldn't heat the envelope, but they would come in for a quiet time,
Mhm.
even in excess of the 40 hours, but come in to have that quiet time to work on some project that they had going on. So the building was still accessible, but open to the public.
Right, so I don't know if that changes the savings, the utility savings if people.
Yeah, well,
are
they,
in and out the
one
building,
guy,
but-
one gentleman I actually called and asked them, and he said that heat the building, like they didn't use it as a operational day.
Okay,
So it'd be like coming in, like if I come in on a Saturday, it's chilly.
Bring
Yeah,
your coat.
But it's.
I mean, the
it's fine.
DPW is still gonna be open on a Friday, they're gonna come in,
Yeah.
whatever. Election days or
Yeah.
early voting, it's gonna be open, so
Great.
that's awesome.
All right. Is
That'll
there
be
one more on
fun.
this?
Oh, yeah, so
Alright.
that is.
Hmm.
That's essentially the compensation, classification, employee retention, recruitment and morale piece of the workshop.
All right. Anything to add amongst the three of us to that general subject?
I think the morale is pretty good in general, from what I sense. I'm not in as much as, I could be or should be, but I think this will just increase that in
Yeah.
the long run and keep it going for sure.
And, selfishly. Right, so you want a high performance organization, right? So. It's always easier to know that, not only is one to have a good culture and the morale is high. But we're competitive in the marketplace, that in the back of your mind when you're. You don't want to admit it, but sometimes it's like, well. This person leaves, who else? Who else are you gonna come in and fill the spot? But if you're like, hey, this is a lucky spot to be in. We're a great organization, we're competitive. It's either you perform at a high level or
We'll find someone else.
we're moving,
Mhm.
we're gonna move on to somebody else.
It's great. That's true.
And certainly, I think, as with a small organization. To retain, that, it's critical to kind of adjust to individual requirements, and this gives us a menu of things that we can offer out
Different
to
options. Yeah.
different options that, one thing might be
Appeal.
appeal to this person, something else, but overall, we'll be able to satisfy most of the expectations and keep our folks going forward, motivated and producing at a high level. Excuse me. All right,
Wait, you gotta go back.
we have to go
Go
back.
back.
one,
We
right?
didn't
Yeah.
talk about Margaret's
Okay.
quote.
So this slide is to cover. One of the the top
Mhm.
12 ARPA pieces were to provide a temporary. Staffing bump in the land use department to essentially handle all the stuff going on here. I know Margaret in one of the select board meetings reported that unprecedented time for Wenham in the planning department.
Sure
That's
is.
true. We really have a ton of stuff going on. And with all these balls in the air and more stuff coming in, as Boulder Lane is evolving on the Beverly side. We need to have the staffing in place. And be ready to move when we need to, so that some of these opportunities that are coming down the pike aren't lost or mishandled.
Yeah, and Margaret's situation is a little tricky. In terms of how many hours she can actually work, because she's theoretically retired. So she's working that out with Kate.
Yep, so
To
that,
add capacity.
so that's, right. So, Kate and her have talked. Kate has the interest, she has the time available to dedicate to it. So it would really be, originally it was to increase Margaret's hours, because most of the need is at the planning level. But Kate does have a significant amount of overlap and knowledge in that area. And Margaret is capped by Mass General Law, the pension restrictions. And Kate is not, so they, would be looking for the board. Obviously, at a meeting, the motion would be something to the effect of allowing temporary increase of Kate Mallory's hours. Between 4 and 6 hours per week for the next, 3 years, or we can do it annually or 6-month increments, however the board would prefer to do it, but we basically. The estimation in the ARPA funds, I believe, was 6 hours a week for 3 years. Is about how far we think the game will last.
So we'll expect to bring that forward in the.
Yeah.
Very near term meeting.
Yep.
It'll be an unprecedented motion.
Yes. Yeah, you can, if you just walk into Margaret and Kate's office, just by the stacks of paper organized by project, you can see how much is going on in there.
Awesome. It's great for Wenham too.
All right, and this one is something that I would like to pitch to the select board. We have, this has been already talked about at the finance committee level, because we wanted to get the budgetary needs squared away. And it looks like that those are at least supported by the finance committee, so operationally. I'd like to discuss with the select board, the potential of part of the way to creating, right now, what exists is about, I think it's $8,500 a year in the clerk's budget to fund a part-time administrative assistant. There is about $25,000 a year, maybe $30,000 a year in the finance budget currently in FY '23 to fund a 19-hour or less position as an accounting assistant.
85,000 in the clerk's budget to fund a small, not 85,000 for the administrative assistant.
8,500, did I say
8,500?
8,500.
8,500, okay, is that what you?
that's-
I heard
yeah.
5,000, I was like,
That's
what?
8,500, small
Yeah,
portion of it.
8,500,
So-
85,000.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So my thought is we've tried to recruit for the finance assistant all year and have come up. We have James, who is great and, but I think it's, he's admitted that it's somewhat a temporary basis kind of in helping out just because we're in a bind and we can't find anybody. And so we're looking to, this need is certainly there in the accounting office, the need is there in the clerk's office. We're thinking about combining the roles and making a full-time accounting assistant. And as part of that role, defined in the job responsibilities would be to have the ability to cross-train and overlap in the clerk's office for times when, I know Diane, you ran the office a little bit differently, Trudy did a little bit differently, but basically to have keep the window open in the extent that there's an absence in the office, and also have the capacity to draw from an additional individual for times like, when the dog licenses are really busy, the late parking permits,
Census.
the election, things like that. I think that, some of it fits somewhat in the accounting realm as well. So I feel like it's not really that far outside of the wheelhouse as far as like processing payments for, dog licenses and issuing the paperwork, where it's, kind of in line with the type of work accounting does already. I just thought that it was, it could be a way we could take, available funds and almost fund the position. I mean, it's certainly not a net zero impact, but it would also bulk up go get someone in there that has the interest in accounting to, to bulk up the finance department, because I mean, we're still kind of reeling from the turnover in the finance department, barely keep head above water, and trying to go back to pre-pandemic times when the turnover started and doing catch up on all the books and entries. We're getting more requests from boards and committees for increasing accounting detail and reporting, that we just simply don't have the software capability nor the staffing to go back, in some cases 14, 15 years to recreate expenditure details for certain projects that, as we move in the capital discussion we'll be talking about next year, there's a request for a more comprehensive accounting package so that we can meet these needs. And also, the needs aren't really unlike what other communities currently account at. It's just a situation where, Wenham is in a software that is relatively basic and no longer supported. So we just don't have the ability to build in any more flexibility into the current. We're kind of stuck where we are. I would like to move to a software that we can report on projects and, so you can be like, all right, the town hall had a warrant article for $40,000 to paint the building. And 10 years goes by, it's like, we ever paint the building or how much do we end up spending on it? Like right now, we can't tell you. Right, without actually literally going through the stacks of
Invoices.
warrant invoices. Now,
Is that
this,
because of the turnover that we went from?
well, and
one
it's
company
just
to
the way the accounting is set up, it's
Okay.
just a high level, like general fund booking
Oh, okay.
transaction. And this would allow us to go, all right, here's. We $40,000, yep, this is the project is 100% completed, total expenditures were $33,000. So it's in theory, we have money sitting out there in warrant articles that are unspent. That could be scraped back and reappropriated for other capital improvements, but the time involved going through all the paperwork and coming up, essentially just pulling out a warrant article 10 years ago and coming up with these numbers. It's just not, it's not in the realm of possibility right now. I mean, that's some of the stuff that, we're looking over, and also, to be able to elevate so originally, the way the department was designed to run was the treasurer collector had an assistant that ran payroll. Treasurer collector was the finance director as well. So they moved away from that model and shifted finance director's responsibilities onto the town accountant. And it didn't work out. I know that individual. I know him personally, and so that didn't work out. I think it's proved to be the accounting position was already, their time was utilized just doing the bookkeeping 40 hours a week, and taking on the additional responsibility of the finance director is just not working out. And it would allow Jamie or the finance, whoever is in that position, to elevate themselves outside of running accounts payable, doing weekly cash turnovers, going to the bank, things like that, and working on high level, budget strategy, researching communities and coming up with benchmark studies on expenditures to make sure we're in line on that we just simply don't have the capacity to do right now.
So our expectation is by kind of melding these two jobs together, that we'll have a higher salary base and hours available for prospective candidates that might be a little bit more attractive.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's really it in a nutshell.
Mhm.
I think it's in theory,
Mhm.
that's how it's gonna work. I mean, I think it's anybody's guess as to how it plays out, but I do think that I do think it's in the realm
think,
of manageable.
Given that we have two different departments or organizations too, that the just job description is going to be very important to define the specific tasks that the individual is responsible for, and the two different things. But the town hall, if you're in here, as you were, that a lot of stuff is shared anyhow, as far as backing people up, anywhere from just the phone calls or, coming up on town meeting. It's all hands on deck to get the work done for that particular project.
And the other thing I forgot to mention is, just business continuation. So in the event that, well, and so we have three positions. Let's say we have the town clerk, we have the finance director, and we have whatever we're gonna call this position if I get the select board's approval. Any one of those leave the flexibility to cover, and just because it's, if the town clerk, and I know Diane did it differently, it made more sense for the business continuation pieces. Is you're bringing in folks part-time that don't really know anything about Wenham. It's just who's available to come in part-time to keep the office open, and answer phone calls. Well, this individual works 40 hours a week in the building. They know everything that's going on. They overlap. And the same goes both ways for both the finance department. If that person leaves, right, the finance director is a little bit more involved with the operations of the clerk, so they know. Clerk leaves, that person who, is now has some intimate knowledge of how the clerk's office works. So you got continuation there. Finance director leaves, they have some intimate knowledge to at least keep the books going, like someone like right now, when the finance director leaves, there's, essentially no paychecks get moved, no no vendor bills get paid, no cash turnovers get done. So it is this critical piece where there's just no overlap right now. I honestly, it makes me nervous. 'Cause I've lived through a community when an entire finance office went black. And it's pretty
Mm.
crazy. It's
Mm.
the literally, it's the operational hub of the organization and everything stops. And people are so, by people, independent auditors and consultants that do staffing as a part-time basis. Are so booked right now that you'll call around and be like, hey, we just had so-and-so took another position, we need. Somebody, 10 hours a week to keep things afloat for the next couple months while we hire for it. The questions, and I've been through this not very long ago, was. Hey, would love to help out, but we are so slammed with work right now. And we can't even get staff on our help, so you're on your own. So it's, it's something to think about that, times are good right now. And we're staffed and things are going great,
So
but it doesn't always stay like that.
I'm supportive of this.
My hesitation would be, if this so-called staff person would be primarily in the finance office. And just covering when needed for whatever. I find it's like a floater thing. We had lots of floaters, say 10 years ago, that would come in and cover any office, and basically all they did was answer phones and take
Well,
messages. So
Maybe the,
I would just, because. Well, I know everybody's workload changes based on the year, whatever. The town clerk's office changes almost monthly on what the duties are, and if you have someone come in and help out in September to cover an absence, and then they come in October, you have to train them before they show up. So you need to have had them in the office so that they know where the absentee ballot applications are, or where the dog tags are, or what's the process you use for turning over money. It's a lot of work. I have lots of people in my office. And my other office here, I did as well. I like to have them learn the processes so that if something happens, of course, I used to walk across the street. If I got hit coming over, then whoever, any of my senior tax work off, they could do so many of the different items because they came in on a consistent basis. So I
Well,
would just
that would
rather see
be,
that kind of.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
the
makes a lot of
job
sense.
description, I think, is key, and not
Sure.
just a generic job description.
That
It
you're
would have
gonna
to be,
float between two.
yeah,
Oh, maybe-
specific duties that have to be opted in.
So many
on both
hours, here,
sides,
so
yeah.
many hours
Yeah,
there.
do right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even
And then
the
be
duties,
flexible.
it's like you. Physically move your seat for
Yeah.
4 hours a week or whatever.
Whatever it
I
is,
think-
yeah, okay, so that would just be my concern.
Yeah, no, I think
I don't
that
wanna go to
totally-
that floater.
Yeah, no, I think that's,
idea
I
again,
think
that
that's
just
very
doesn't really
valid,
help.
because yeah, then it becomes great. I know sometimes.
Because I think every office has their duties, and anyone can cover a phone and take
Mm.
messages, but not anyone can
We
really
want- we
work
need
that office.
more-
So you need more
Yeah,
consistency.
more consistency,
maybe-
more expertise on both sides.
Yeah,
Would be permanent weekly
Yeah.
hours would
Yeah.
probably be.
yeah,
Alright. So we'll move forward with that one too. then.
definitely.
We'll bring that to,
But yeah, to a regular.
So
So
the
regular-
job descriptions,
yeah, so,
probably the first.
yeah.
Yeah.
The public is saying they can't see the slides, and I don't
Mm.
know why.
Can they hear us?
Yes.
Mm.
They've never seen the slide at all during the whole presentation.
It's available at home, they can look. Slides are available on the website too.
Like your duplicate slideshow.
Yeah, duplicate slideshow. Catherine, can you see
Did
the
they have school
slides
today?
on your computer?
We didn't cancel school here, did we?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not really watching it.
Yeah, it used to be, had at least 8 inches before you cancel school.
Right. Well,
But
or then,
that-
then it went to, let's cancel school on Friday because there's a snowstorm coming,
Yeah,
like, right, 3 days before.
Because I remember too, the criteria was, you know. The buses all
The
had the
buses.
chains back then too.
Oh, my
They Put the
God.
chains on, and and certainly, most of the side streets in the 50s and 60s weren't plowed on, a continuous
Right,
basis.
right.
They kept the main arteries open.
Yeah.
97 Cherry to Main
And
to
more.
Larch Road.
Yeah, that's it.
But after that, it was, and maybe a day or two, so, I can remember trudging,
Trudging through the snow, no matter.
Yeah, yeah,
what,
down-
Barefoot.
oh, yeah, but down to Cherry Street, because the bus would come back with the chains.
Wow.
you know. Higher level of service today.
Higher level of service.
Right. So just a quick break here as we try to work the slideshow. Be back with you folks shortly.
Do we have water anywhere? Do we have any water bottles?
No.
No. I wanna go in my- Oh, we can see us.
That works.
There we go.
And for the folks at home, all the materials we're referencing and slides we're talking through, are all available on the website.
Doing
can
that
move that.
merging of a position though would increase, it would be a benefited position, right?
Yeah,
So
I
it would
mean,
increase that.
right,
So
that's
it's not
It's not a net zero.
Net
and I've
zero,
never,
but it
I've
might-
never,
but it might be a better
it's
performance.
just taking existing resources and combining them to kind of offset the total cost. You can close. All right, so now we'll move on to the
It's a
capital.
waste of thing.
Yeah.
We got another package here.
Do we want to take 5 minutes? People go to the bathroom or anything?
Anything?
No, but I should stand. That's what I.
Ah, yes. Mhm. Talking to this sheet next, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and yeah, in conjunction with.
I looked at them. Here's a group. Is this one? Yeah. Surrounds.
What you need? Good.
Yeah.
We should have one of those cutter machines underneath the table here for you.
My
So you
phone
can-
says that, yeah.
Yeah, so you can-
I found, because when I go to work, for some reason, when I sit at my desk, it's not as comfortable, so I do a lot of standing,
Mhm.
but then I'm just standing, which I guess is not that, we're still in. Can't get up, can we? So it's a little bit more sore at night. It's quite an experience, I wouldn't recommend it.
To anybody.
No.
It sounds like getting new software,
It's-
Yeah, it's not funny either.
Yeah,
if it's not supported,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a clear sign you're in trouble.
Mhm.
if we can't add the modules needed to expand our capabilities, and we see it, every day. Any of us ask a question, and it's not available until you go back to all the
All the
papers,
paper, yeah,
it's
Yeah.
the money stuff,
like doing research on his past annual town meetings, so I think it was somewhere in the 2000s, so
Yeah,
flipping through pages, flipping through pages, because we
And-
know.
and given what we're putting out. But 2 warrants on a weekly, bi-weekly
Oh,
basis.
right.
You got a stack of 100 for any given year to find something, and to trace, some we have. Where some committees back 3 or 4 years already, mainly going back through. But, we have others like the trust that we talked about before that, just too daunting to try to go
Like the
back.
cemetery
Like-
trust funds. And that
Well,
kind
the
of stuff.
cemetery is pretty good, but like Affordable Housing Trust, what was the
Oh,
total
right.
flow of that money? And in the past, it's been very dependent upon the individual chair
Mhm.
or individual staff member in here, keeping it
Keeping it
on the side.
The only thing I would recommend is that you run the old system and the new system in parallel.
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah.
One of the great Gillette story is,
This is agenda.
can't remember what it was, but we switched over our order entry and shipping system. And they didn't run them in parallel. 8 or 6 weeks.
That's not good.
No, it was the end of a quarter.
Yeah.
It's a disaster.
So we don't need that stuff, right? Even when we did the website, when we revamped the website and we had both of them going at the same time and then they combined, it still wasn't smooth.
It should be.
You know what I mean? It
Oh,
just,
yeah, right, right.
it's always
Where's on
something.
the website with the select board.
This packet.
I didn't post anything yet today,
Oh, yeah.
no.
Yeah. Wherever I'm gonna post it right now. Wait, is that possible?
I can get out of.
Can you read that?
presentation.
I might
Yes,
have to
yes,
get
that's fine,
my,
but
Yeah,
it's,
why don't we file the application? Now, if you want to share this.
Packet and slides.
Yeah.
I like these Friday meetings. I don't know about you guys.
What's that?
I sort of like these
Yeah,
Friday
not bad.
meetings.
I know better than.
I really want to come talk to you about this.
Okay,
Are we muted?
I couldn't get these
Are
numbers.
we muted?
okay,
It doesn't-
which ones?
Down here.
Okay,
Do you want me to share what you just sent me?
yeah,
I don't see what else.
when Joey's back, I exploded from
When I worked at Quaker Oats way back in
Was
Back
that,
then.
83 to 86, we had summer hours on Fridays.
all right,
So everybody would go play golf on Friday afternoons during the summer. And then everybody would be back working Saturday morning. Place was a complete sweatshop.
wow. Where's the one you did the commercial?
What's that?
Where were you working when you did the commercial? Kibbles and bits, kibbles and bits.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, so funny story.
there we go.
So I get out of the tuck school. Show up at Quaker on like August 30th, and they just had relaunched Kibbles and Bits to Kibbles and Bits and Bits and Bits. I
remember the commercial.
Yeah.
It's- it's-
So, like 2 weeks in, I get a call from our agency. And they're like, so you're the new slug on Kibbles and Bits. That's what they call they call us slugs. And we had an open area. And that's where all the marketing people were, the junior marketing people, and it was called the bullpen. I get this call. Agency guy says, ABC won't clear your commercial. And I'm like, really? And so this commercial was the bulldog, right? He's walking at you. I want more bits, more bits, more bits, and my kibbles and bits and bits and bits. And then they show him from the rear. And ABC said, if you want us to run the commercial, you have to airbrush off its testicles. And this is the show, this. Commercial that the agency had ever tested. And the brand is boom.
Read that yet?
Yeah.
What are we working on now? It was, I can't read this, Steve.
When Joe gets back, we'll start.
Oh, wait for Joe.
He's just uploading, make sure everything's on the website.
Yeah, the guy, the creative guy on that commercial, Jack DiGiuseppe. Who looked exactly like Jack DiGiuseppe. Had the shirt on. Buttoned down to here. Big gold chains. Had a Ferrari 308 that he didn't actually have insured, and he told him.
Oh,
Very different to do that. DVD in New York.
How many people are in the meeting? A bigger turnout on Friday too.
I guess they like that too, right? If you will.
I had my first. New school meeting. Coming up next week,
Yes,
be interesting, to see how that goes. And I finally reached out to Dean Peterson to find out when the Veterans Committee's meeting. I missed the first one.
second Tuesday.
Yeah.
Of the month,
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock,
COA.
followed by a coffee at 10
Yep,
with the veteran service officer from Gloucester. The district one always comes to the 10 o'clock.
and I've been working with the Wish folks, and we're gonna make it a 501c3. So that people can actually deduct it.
All right,
Right now, they can't.
all right.
So it's really not that hard of a process.
There's been a steady increase in veterans coming to the 10 o'clock coffee.
That's great.
Yeah, so
That's great.
and some out of towners were collecting to Hamilton
Good.
and so forth. So it makes the best part is, as I say, the veteran service officer is there with the computer,
Mhm.
log in, or for new people, log into the Veterans Administration system or give updates on, status of cases or whatever. So.
Great.
And those are the
That's the first Tuesday.
first,
You looking for
second
10?
Tuesday.
Second Tuesday, 9 AM at the COA.
Yes, I'm down.
I'd forgotten, but my wife Julie actually worked on Wish.
Mhm.
like
Packet
10
is
years ago.
posted, but the slides aren't because you can't post both. It has to be one continuous packet.
Can you
If this-
post this in the slides? Isn't there a section for slides?
It's like the packet, the agenda and the minutes. And once you can't post two things in one spot.
All right, we'll take care of that later.
having another. For sure, water. Meeting coming up. See how that's going.
Bruce won his election, so it's good for a couple more years to keep the emphasis going on that, because I think that's, you know, for the past decade, it's been pretty much a one-man show. You know, Bruce pushing that at the state level to address water issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we did actually, at the first meeting that I went to. I mean, Beverly Salem was there,
Big fun.
which is important.
The work,
Right.
I can go to PTO.
Um,
They can work on my night.
We'll see. Something actually gets changed.
You want to see the sky, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Looks pretty cool. This is the worst part right now.
It's tender, so,
Yeah,
yeah, it's still, there's.
no.
So Joe all set up there.
No one sees you. Tiptoeing through the tulips, don't worry.
Are we ready to recommit? So,
Oh, is the battery a little lower there? We have a.
Is there a battery on this?
Yeah, it looks like it's, won't get too low.
Plugged in.
I think Michelle's getting there.
The other issue that's floating around out there, is this whole indoor air quality. Evidently, it's like the number one priority of the federal government.
Really?
It's really about the level of carbon dioxide. And there's a study, it actually wasn't a study, it was a sort of a something that happened by mistake, but somebody out in California, when they were having big forest fires back in like 2015.
Yeah.
We're gonna slide this table.
They brought in ventilation to keep the smoke out.
right,
And what they found out, that's, and the carbon dioxide level went down. And all of the kids' scores went up.
Hmm.
Grades.
yeah. All right,
And it's sort of like on SATs,
We'll be up a little
they
bit.
went up like 500. You know, added a couple hundred points to it.
all right.
Right on.
Oh, thank you.
Technology challenges. We're learning, we're learning.
Yeah. It's only the
It's a
second,
new
the second
world.
time.
Nothing is easy.
Only the second time.
Are we
All right,
this side, are we?
so
Yeah.
we're powered up. Are we
Yes.
live again?
I think we were live the whole time.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so share that forecast.
Share it again.
So we'll talk about this one. The next slide, Gary, is
Right,
forecasting
Yeah.
capital improvement.
all yours then.
All right, so. First, I just wanna call everyone's attention to the bottom. It's like when I added lines and messed up the formulas on net free cash after appropriation. So the totals should be in FY 24, negative 60,000. FY 25, 350. 26, 350, 27, 350.
So we're right
Yeah,
down here.
down here, yeah.
But that's why I couldn't get them that.
352.
Because he was like.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Trying to
Yeah.
get that
I looked, I
back.
was like,
All right, all right.
Let me-
So you want to describe what we have here and then.
Yeah, so what this is, it's a forecasted model. that takes our estimated revenue growth based on historical numbers and estimated expenditure growth based on historical averages and or stated increases. The schools has mentioned in a meeting that they're thinking 6.5% increases over the next year or two is likely. So that is what the model has incorporated. Their 7-year average is actually 5.5%, so not too far off that. And if I could draw your eyes down to the where it says surplus / deficit. You'll see that we're in a slight surplus given current budget estimates right now. And forecasted in 25, at the current rate, we are in the negatives. So what I did on the line directly below that $30, $61, and $67 is if we were to continue to operate in line with this forecast, that would be the added annual tax that would be added to each person's tax bill per $100,000 of value. So if you have $1 million home, that's $300 per year in additional tax to offset our deficit. Down here, we have, based on our number of meetings with the schools, they have 2 large projects that are coming, they're going to be coming forward with. One in this spring's town meeting for FY, that would be effective for FY 24. And that is the school fields. We're using an estimation of a total spend of $10 million, which Hamilton's is 1/3 of that. Wenham's is 1/3 of that. And it would be financed likely over 10 years because that is essentially the end of life on a number of the materials, and you'll start to need to do maintenance, replacing them at the 10-year mark. So going beyond the 10 years would not be advised. And below that, you again have the cost per year per $100,000 of assessed value. In FY 25, in the special town meeting, the town of Wenham and the town of Hamilton voted to authorize the schools to pursue a feasibility study for the new school. They are moving forward with that. And there's the high likelihood of the expectation, since we have been fast tracked into the MSBA program with a 47% reimbursement rate, is to have the feasibility study completed and have actual cost estimates for debt exclusion to start the building of the new school in the FY 25 town meeting. So that takes place in April of calendar year 24. And again, below that is the cost per $100,000 to fund that. $40 million is the estimated portion of Wenham's, and we would be serving that debt for 30 years. And on the bottom, you see the debt exclusion for town capital needs. Right now, we're running with about $800,000 in FY 24. The debt service on that is about $85,000 a year over 10 years. And again, the estimated residential impact per $100,000. These are needs such as, pretty significant rot, structural damage to the police station, just due to age, that needs to be replaced. We have HVAC needs at the library. We have both the police station and the fire station roofs are beyond their life expectancy. They aren't leaking significantly yet, but this is kind of the time to do it before it becomes deferred maintenance. We are beyond what you would typically get for a roof. And that is what is in the capital plan. So if I move your eyes to the people at home, the FY 24 project request by funding source page. There's a lot of numbers on here, but once you kind of see the layout, it starts to make sense. So the first kind of the bracket, you'll see it says ARPA. So those are all the projects that are funded by the ARPA funds, and those are capital related items. And you can see the total of those projects. Then moving on to the borrowing column, that's a 5-year lookout as to what we have on our radar that likely need borrowing for. You can see all the individual projects that make up about that $800,000 total for FY '24. Then moving on to the free cash. That square, that's a 5-year capital improvement plan that is likely going to be needs that will be hopefully fit into the free cash appropriation at the annual town meeting to, so we don't have to rely on borrowing. And the project details are, right down the line by department and need. And then we have the big dollar item there under the grant for FY '24 is the fire station and full fire department has applied or will be applying on, I believe they said February 10th, is for a grant that will update their communication radios. So the total cost to replace them all with the the current software and everything that today's radios use is about $330,000. The state requires to be qualified for the grant, that the community make a 10% match at town meeting to appropriate 10% and estimated the 10% replacement cost. That's why you see in the free cash column underneath the fire department, if you look at the radio match grant, you'll see a $29,000 raise appropriation out of free cash, which is the 10% grant match that we're required to do to be eligible to receive the $300,000 awarded to us. And you can see the water funds, although not impacted to free cash or the tax levy, they're funded through the ratepayers of the of water usage. And you can see some of the projects they have going on right now. And I just, as far as funding sources, they do have reserves that could be funding this. So it's unlikely that they would be funded through an increase in rates. I just want to preface that it's not new. They're planning for these things. It's just kind of, I'm getting them out there so that we can track them and kind of show the community the capital needs.
Mhm.
And with that, it's kind of a long way of saying that, we're coming into some, some difficult financial times. And I think the next slide is going to be helpful to the folks on fixed income and things like that to help absorb some of these tax increases, assuming that, again, none of this select board can act independently on, no board can. This is all goes to town meeting, voted on by the residents. Not a done deal by any stretch. This is just an illustration of, everything was to appear on the town meeting warrant and everything was to go through as outlined here. These are some of the estimated rate impacts that you'd be seeing.
What sign,
What's that?
what sign are you referring to?
Yes, and now, we'll have a discussion on this and then.
Comments, Peter, or questions?
I don't.
So certainly, at the disruptions during the pandemic, we actually spent a little bit less money than expected, both certainly on the school side and us, but now we're into a period of new reality of catching up with stuff that was deferred for a long time, and knowing that we're making this effort to show ahead of time where the trend's going, so that the town can be prepared to make the decisions at the town meeting as to where we go. But for the first time in many years, we're really looking forward beyond the 1-year budget
Right.
to see what's out there. And thanks, Steve, for doing a massive amount of work to track all this down and project it out.
I did have
Michelle
one
and
comment
Joe,
Is
very
the-
helpful.
when I'm looking at the
Yeah,
sheet.
yep.
I mean, I can barely read them, but FY, what I wrote down. FY '28 just explodes relative to the previous years.
Yeah, so part of that is intentional because those are projects that probably won't need to be done in the next 5 years. Will likely as we roll, as we continue, so next year will be, and then next year will include FY 29. And they may be pushed out again. It seems that these are big projects that kind of use the cutoff of like asking departments, how about like big picture 10-year stuff? So we kind of backloaded it to get on people's
Got it.
radar
Yeah.
on the last.
So we know it's coming.
It's a placeholder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Placeholder.
So it's like, nobody's like, holy crap, where did that come
Mm.
from? In 1 year, it's like, we've been moving it out by year, every year for the last 3 years, and now we're kind of getting to the point where it needs. to
And
be
certainly, the further you go out, I mean, this year's budget, where FinCom's going through the final drill. Next year's budget, we're pretty close on the estimates, but obviously as we go out, the capital needs may change a little bit, but the important thing here is that we're identifying big ticket items well ahead of time so that we can organize the expenses so that we don't have the previous peaks and valleys on the budget.
That's right.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Yep.
All right,
What slide are we going? Are we going to the slides now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's jump to the slides. You see that, Catherine?
this shows up, all right.
All right.
Very well, so the tax bills have gone out, and if we look at this sheet here,
Mhm.
so.
The average tax bills.
Yeah, the average tax bills. So certainly we're in kind of a very unexpected and different time as far as the tax bills, driven by the rapid market real estate changes from the pandemic era. So indeed, we've had many, many visitors to the assessor's desk and email and phone calls, so forth, coming in. But there is on the website currently about the 8-9 slide briefing that talks about the basics of the assessment process. And indeed, we understand that there is 3 major aspects at work here. That the rapid increase in market values for houses as people came out of the urban areas and bought into Wenham without much regard to price, they wanted to come in and pay any price. So that has moved up the value of homes in Wenham to the extent that if you look at the overall tax base, we've gone in 1 year from 970 million to 1,140 million, or $1.14 billion. So, like a 16% increase in the value of residences in town in 1 year. The impact comes in that is not evenly spread out. Certain categories of homes have escalated much higher than that, and others have stayed the same or tailed off. And surprisingly, historically, it's the smaller homes have become suddenly most attractive for people coming into town. So indeed, if you look at the overall numbers, the average increase is 3.09%, which equates to about $440 on the average tax bill. But we know that there's a group of people based upon the properties they own that are facing much, much higher percentage increase and much, much higher actual dollar tax bills at work. So Steve, we're looking at ways that we can ameliorate that. You have to understand that the assessment process is closely controlled by Massachusetts state law. It's the way every municipality works, and that, yes, there is a distortion here, but there are some relief measures that we can address. So Steve, you want to talk to these items?
So, in your packet should be an email from,
From Therese?
Terry
Fontaine.
Fontaine,
This one?
Mhm.
who very graciously outlined before us the current exemptions that are available for, in the town of Wenham. So what we have, what we can, the first one with the exemption, so we're looking at ways that the town can take what we currently do and increase that. So section 5C.5 of chapter 59 of Mass General Law allows under local option for the community to double all of these exemptions that are outlined. So we'll just use for an example, the elderly exemption is about $1,000, and we could, under local option at town meeting, double that to 2,000. There's some caveats to that. You can't access the full 2,000 if it reduces your tax liability year over year. So generally you see a 1 to 3 year step in to the full $2,000.
But that would help those that are hit the highest in this year.
Yep.
Because, whatever exemption they get is not gonna reduce it below last year's level.
Yeah, and then with the potential of these debt exclusions, overrides, what have you, looming, that's just further increasing tax bill and, works in the favor to be able to access the full additional 1,000 in year one, and probably likely a lot of cases.
But not this year. I mean, we would have to bring it to town meeting, would be able to,
This year, there is,
nothing we can do.
It's what's on the books.
this
Yeah,
year is
yeah,
what was
so this is-
adopted
this is
last
what we
year.
can try to fix going
Yeah.
forward, yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
So the other. And so that's our exemptions. Those are the statutory exemptions that are available to individuals that are, veterans, blind, disabled. There's a number of exemptions, and the assessors has significant amount of information available to anyone who's interested in talking about them, seeing if you qualify. There's income limits and asset limits to some of them, so it's not super easy process. Sometimes you got to share your prior year's tax returns, all confidential. It's not public information. It's just to make sure you meet certain thresholds that are set by the state law. And then we do retain, again, the ability to double that exemption if that's. the town
How
wants
does
to
the
do
exemptions
forward.
actually work? So say you get the $1,000 or whatever it is exemption. Who pays that? Do we cover that? Do we have a
Yeah, so
surplus?
every year, the Board of Assessors elects an overlay amount. So
Overlay,
if you
yeah.
look at. I'm sure it's okay, so if you look at the forecast in the revenue section, you see it's actually counted as a negative revenue source because it's a liability.
Mhm.
And so essentially it's an expenditure that's a revenue. I don't know if it all.
So
counting
when we,
But
if this
basically-
passes, then we have to increase that at some
Yeah.
point so that it's.
Yeah, well, you can look at the trends, you can say, right, so we had significant releases of overlay the past 2 years that we don't have, essentially spent down the overlay balance as excess overlay. Over the last 2 budget cycles, so 21
That
and
we haven't
22,
used.
20,
that we haven't
excuse me,
used, yeah,
22 and
okay.
23. So that's essentially given back to the town.
Mhm.
And saying, all right, we have this pot of money that is there in case of, a mess up in assessments, to account for any potential acknowledging that no process is perfect and that there's going to be some potential overvaluations. It gives the flexibility to adjust those individuals' tax bills, and it allows us to pay for our exemption programs. All come out of that, and then further on down the line, write off things like personal property, motor vehicle excise on collectibles, and things like that. So it's just like this pot of money that is basically your uncollection liability, and it gives the town the ability to be whole on its
Mhm.
Its assessment for the full tax bill for the budget. And yeah, so with that said, that looking at it, obviously you can't predict in the future, but from what I've seen historically, and the amount of money that is generated and then ends up subsequently given back to the town every several years, it's likely that we would be able to absorb, based on the current participation rate, absorb that into the existing overlay. You know,
Okay.
based on historical averages.
One important point we should put here is the abatement process and the exemptions for the public out there is, it is hard state mandated deadlines. And that is got to get everything done and in before 1 February,
Right.
which is not very far away.
Yeah,
And the
that's,
assessor's office and the board is ready to help you with that process.
because just, you know, just for the public's understanding, just like. You know, the Mass General Law, Chapter 59. Is very strict in assessing standards and practices. So it's, again, like Gary said, it's the same in every community across the Commonwealth. We need to prove out our values to the state every year. So it's, again, it's not, we have oversight that we report to at the Department of Revenue. And they certify this list of values. So they're essentially saying, yes, we've tested your analytics and we're certifying essentially every assessed value in town to move forward with, you know, your billing process and to go ahead and raise the money through taxation based on these certified values, which are essentially people's percentage of the tax burden as a whole. And just like we need to prove that, when you're doing the abatement application, if the state, you know, you may have to prove the adjustment going the other way, because you're now to prevent any funny business going on. Like, all right, you know, we tested a process and we approved this value. And you are now changing that value. You know, why? You need to support it. So it's not really just an arbitrary process. There's checks and balances along the way, just so folks understand what's going on, you know, behind the scenes in the assessor's office. You know, they're held to, you know, there's an outside set of eyes looking at everything they do. And that's where the dates come from, because they're like, all right, we want to see the application, make sure original signatures on the application, been received, date stamped by February 1st. You know, let's see the supporting documents. And the same thing as it goes through the process, if the individual is not happy with the results of their abatement, say the Board of Assessors does not give any relief, or they give some relief, but the taxpayer is still not happy with the amount of relief they received. The next step is to go to the Appellate Tax Board in Boston, which is a quasi judicial branch where you'll have a chairman that will oversee the case. And it's, you know, I guess I've heard it described as, you know, similar to court, but very loose. They're very loose in their procedures. And again, you have your chance to present your case to them, and they're looking at all these jurisdictional requirements that the town had to take going through the whole process, with certified and attested by the town clerk that these things, the tax bills were mailed on time, that the abatement has been received on time. And if this package is not complete, they called the jurisdictional documents is not complete, then the Appellate Tax Board does not have any authority over the case and will be thrown out of court. So this is just, you know, just so folks understand that there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. It's not, we're not trying to be difficult with the dates. It's, you know, this is, you know, we don't make the rules, we follow.
So essentially, for the public, the exemptions are things that you may qualify automatically. The abatements, it's going to be your case to show that your assessment was incorrect, which is a much higher standard to reach. And also that understand that those that have very, very high increases this past year also reflects the fact that your actual value of your home went up very, very much as well. So that in one sense, you created wealth, but we do understand that for certain groups of people, even though you had that paper wealth increase, that you may have a cash flow or challenges to meet that tax bill. So are you going to talk about deferrals at all?
Yeah, I can.
Right. Maybe right at this point, or?
Yeah, might as well, it's part of the
Yeah.
exemption. So the other option is there's a deferral option. So if you meet, and I think, I know that the community has some flexibility in setting income requirements. But the deferral option is where you have the ability, or the taxpayer has the ability to defer their entire tax bill. So what this does is it essentially creates a lien on your estate for the amount of your tax bills plus interest. And when the individual sells the home or it goes into an estate or a probate, then the town has first dibs, so to speak, on making itself whole in the deferred tax revenue, and then the rest goes into the estate. Generally, it's an age-driven program, so generally people are, are 65 or older, meet certain income thresholds. But the nice thing about it is you defer your entire tax, so it's not like you make, your tax bill went up $2,000 this year, your exemption takes out 1,000 of that. It's like, you have the ability to just defer the whole thing. Or, either the rest of your life until you decide to move out of Wenham. And it's a really good program, but, we also want to stress the fact that it is a lien on the property. And that, if you have any sort of estate planning done, and quantifying any sort of inheritance, that the town kind of becomes the first stakeholder. So if you defer $70,000 in taxes over a 10-15 year period, then that $70,000 the town is made whole first. First and foremost, and then the rest passes through.
Steve, if I want to read about that,
Mhm.
where can I see that?
We'll put a link on the website. It's I don't have the link in top of my head, but I'll provide an informational guide released by the Department of Revenue for the board to read. We'll also put it up on the website, and yeah, it's really, will give you all the ins and outs.
And this program needs to be adopted at a town meeting,
No, I believe we're already adopted.
all right?
It's just not a program that you see, I feel is underutilized, because in my experience. People hear about it, sounds great. And they talk to their kids. And, well, Johnny, he was expecting to get the whole house. We don't wanna, he wasn't thinking of selling the house. So, we don't wanna impact any of that. And then it does, but I personally think that it's a great program, and, I've encouraged my parents to take advantage of it. I think if you worked your whole life and you need to defer that, you've built this asset here that you're living in, then don't worry about, but that's not for,
All right.
that's family stuff.
Back to 3732 is your next.
No back.
No, back. Look further.
Yeah, same slide,
What side do you want?
same slide we were on,
Okay. The other one.
exemption.
So back to that thing about doubling.
Yeah.
Do we have to decide?
Right here, yes, this one.
Yeah, you can up to double, you don't have to double.
You,
So that's
That's a
current,
personal
that's,
decision.
no, that's current exemptions. Correct me if I'm wrong, the town can take action to double the current dollar amounts.
right. So we won't,
Town meeting.
Yes, so
We'll
town
put it on-
meeting,
Put a warrant on the article for that.
okay, great.
yeah, so where,
Next year's.
so where it shows 1,000, we could move the exemption up to 2,000.
Right, or next year.
Yeah,
So when the warrant article, will it say take the whole 1,000 in, the whole 100%? Or would that be up to?
Well, it's the
that
it would
department?
be the adoption
The
of the
adoption.
packet of.
Yeah, so I wonder if
59,
it's
Section 5C.5, and then we have to live within,
in
you'll
that
see
range.
that. It gets a little convoluted with the increase, and it can't, reduce your tax liability in any year.
You can read it for the first few sentences and then it's just
Yeah.
Mass general law.
But anyways, it is a good program. I've worked in communities that do it, and it's,
so we can help some people out by you adopting 3732, the provisions that will allow us to double the exemptions,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Right.
That's,
so we have, so the exemption of
oh,
deferral,
that's the
they
name of
kind
the
of,
bill?
Yeah, that's the,
the exemption of deferrals kind of live within, allowable. Well, just that exemptions and
Yeah.
deferrals allowable under state law that pretty much every community in Massachusetts offers in some shape or form. A lot of the income limits and exemption amounts are dictated by state law. And this law here, 5C1/2 allows the community the flexibility to double them. And then another one that it was a home rule petition for the town of Wakefield, the town assessor. Quasi designed this, it's loosely tied to the formula for calculating your circuit breaker. Refund. So what this does is it's a means tested senior property tax relief. This is separate from the exemption, so you can get both. And it is it allows on a sliding scale based on assessed value, income, assets levels, and there's a whole formula behind it to come up with a level of relief up to twice the income, each year's circuit breaker. So the restriction is twice the top exemption in any community, or reduction can be twice the current circuit breaker.
And that just started in 2021, is that when they started that?
Well, it was adopted in Wakefield and Reading. Probably, I bet 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh, okay,
But
And
that was
then
by a special
special
appeal
act.
to the
So,
legislature
yeah.
to back down.
It's now gone through the legislature and has become my understanding, and you see a lot of communities have adopted it, because this is the first year you could have adopted it, so you would have adopted it last town meeting, effective for 23. And you're seeing communities who are, proactive about the seniors and tax relief have jumped onto that as a way to provide additional relief.
All right.
Senior tax work off. So we've been talking about that, going back and forth. We're basically at the max exemption, the max
1,500.
benefit 1,500. We have no flexibility in exceeding that. So there's not much we can do there. There was some thought that we may be able to exceed it through adopting the maximum allowable state, the maximum not to exceed the state minimum wage. Would actually push in the allowable 125 hours, would push you over the 1,500, but that's not the case. You had to adjust the hours down and not to exceed the 1,500. So we are, looking at that program and doing the most we
do
can
we
there.
have
So that,
participants in that?
yeah, so we currently have that program.
Mhm.
It's organized, Jim Reynolds at the COA manages it. So you can put your application, work with Jim to participate in that program. And essentially, it's not a cash program, it's a tax bill work-off. So you come to the town, you do projects and work for us, and for each hour that you're working here in the town, you get the $15 an hour taken off your tax bill. What we can look at this, though, is we currently have an overall budget, if you want to use that term, of $15,000, which basically limits it to 10
10
people at the full thing. But given the circumstances, and we'll see how Jim's, applications go, certainly it's such a small increment in the huge budget that, we can readily up the
Increase that.
total budget so that we can bring more people in, and we'll make the program easier, so that in the past, we've generally asked for, well, we want you in here for the full total hours. But we're looking too that we could just change it to a project base. So, maybe something is, 12 hours to get this done. $15 an hour, this will get 180 off your bill, and that only commits you to be in here this week. So it's not something that you commit long-term to, but people have the flexibility to go, oh, here's one I can do. And they want me in there for the month of April for 60 hours, I can fit into that one. So we're trying to make that flexible as well.
And so the application, just so people know, is on the COA
Yeah.
page of the website, very easy application,
Yeah.
and it goes right to Jim.
And
And Jim-
basically, there's nobody, it's not like it's full, so you
No,
gotta,
it's not.
we're actively taking folks of this, people we have not exceeded or are to that $15,000 threshold, so there's money out there, if people wanna get involved.
And we also adopted the Veterans Tax Work-Off Program, which is also out there. I don't know where that application is exactly.
Yeah, that. I don't know a lot about.
Is
so
I
don't
think
know.
is the veterans may be sitting up in the assessor's office, but we can
Because
consolidate
that would
that.
go through
And that,
I think it still goes maybe through Dean and then.
Yeah, still.
And then to Jim.
and that also is, that doesn't have a cap on it right now, I don't think.
So, given how hot this topic
Right.
is. Would it make sense to have a single landing page that has all these ways to reduce
Yep.
their
Yeah.
taxes? So it's just one place
Right,
and it's
And then
connect back to.
because we put up the briefing originally, very quick turnaround on that, but yeah, so perhaps, we need, either, I think right up on the front page, don't want to bury it in assessors or
Sure,
some,
sure.
so on the front page, a listing of perhaps the identification of the program, the possible dollars, and who to talk to.
Or links. too.
Yeah, links, yeah,
Yeah,
That would
sounds
make
good.
sense, because
Right.
everybody's talking about
yeah.
this.
Sure.
And also, yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that sounds like a good idea. And then finally, and this, candidly, I just found out about, last night. So this is a senior employment program that has been rolled out by the city of Malden. And where they are circumventing the senior work off program due to the restrictions like what we just talked about. And they've actually, they hire, come up with their own criteria and hire seniors. As temporary employees of the town. And it gives them the flexibility and compensation, and benefit amounts.
So it gives
So-
them money. So it's
Yeah.
a job.
So
they
part of,
fill out
part of the
the
problem
forms.
with, yeah, and then part of the caveat with that is that the senior work off program is an allowable, the overlay is an allowable funding source for that. Senior employment program, from what I can understand, but based on the short conversation I had with a colleague this morning, is would be like any other expense. It'd be,
Appropriate.
it'd be a paycheck, it would be taxes, it would be, you know, it's another employee, part-time, but you do. You know, you kind of open up some flexibility there if that's what, you know, the town
Hmm.
determines it needs.
It avoids the caps.
Yeah.
And the percentages and so forth of the work off program, to be our own.
Right, but it
local
includes all that
employment.
paperwork and putting them into the system and does, like, yeah, it's an.
But if we,
It's an idea.
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot, but the thing is, there's a lot of paperwork, the senior workout program, the back.
That's actually, there's a lot of.
Yeah.
paperwork.
So it's like, it's not really, you're just trading one for the other. So I don't really see it as more
Okay.
work. It's just could be. You know, we look into like all the intricacies, we could be like, no, that doesn't work, but it sounds like it could be a viable alternative if. We're up against some restrictions under state law that we would like to do more or do differently.
Mhm.
As an option that we're looking.
all right. So, continue to work on it, we know it's a. hot button
That's actually a
topic,
lot more productive than I
Yeah.
thought.
Okay,
Because basically it seemed like there was nothing we could do. But there are options.
Right.
And the whole deferral thing. For some people, that's gonna be
Yes.
a pretty good option.
there are some,
I
options, so
know
we'll bring
people
more up in the next
Yeah.
year.
who
So
don't
this year
have
we just
children.
kind of
Right.
slant.
Yeah, certainly, you know. A lot of that stuff becomes an individual case, individual decisions
Right.
on how you want to manage your estate and money.
So if you could send me the link on that.
Yeah, I can do that. And these slides here, Gary, I don't know if you wanted to go another overview.
Well,
Timing
I think,
for the folks
you know,
involved.
we've had quite a few visitors to the assessor's office. So that is really your first stop if you have questions on the tax bill itself. To get information on the particular, especially abatement and exemption rules. And to get the paperwork done, it has to be going into the assessor's office. The points here are that, yes, we recognize the issue here. It's driven by the real estate market. Can't always forecast the future of what the market's gonna shift, but we do see that the trend on the budgets on the other subject is to more expenses. So that, you know, if you fit into one of these categories, it behooves you to get in and get it done not only for this year, but looking forward. The problem for those individuals that are property rich, but cash challenged, that's one point that can help you out of it. But the the bottom line too, you need to reinforce is, all these decisions are yours individually, money, but on the budgeting stuff, we got annual town meeting coming up on 1st of April. And with a population of 5,000 people, you average
200.
200 people, so. Here's your chance to have a say on what the total bill is.
So I think we should have a over under on this
What?
one, I bet,
Oh, I bet.
So,
because it's not gonna be 200.
So
Yeah,
attending town meeting, the decision is yours. If you could just kind of explain how that relates to the high tax bill.
so on the tax bill, you have. Perhaps we can throw, no, don't need that side. I'll just narrate it, all right? We come out of town meeting for the total expenditures for the year. From that amount, we deduct what we raised through the motor vehicle tax and dog licenses, all the little categories. The amount that's left over is what has to be raised by the residential property tax. All the information flows to the state and back, and eventually we come up in November with a tax rate for that fiscal year. However, you've already received your tax bills for the first 2 quarters by then, in July and October. So those are estimates. So when we get the actual calculations confirmed by the state, the assessor's office or finance recalculates what you have left as your share of the tax bill. And so normally your quarterly 3 and quarterly 4 bills, the January and 1 April bills are usually a little bit higher than the first 2. So that's one portion of the increase. The other portion of the increase is we saw the real estate market. People really like those small capes and the small ranches and really bid them up. So if you have one of those, your property value went up much more than a neighbor that had a colonial or some other type of property. Therefore, your share of that overall bill increased as well. So the first layer is the budget that you vote on at town meeting. And last year we said it was 3.09%. So on average, you got the 3% hit. If you're going to always get a little bit larger bill on the 3rd and 4th quarters, and then depending on what type of house you owned, which caused a major change for some people in your assessment, then your share of the total remaining bill went up considerably. For some people, double digit.
You're catching up what you missed in the first and second.
Right.
Yeah, for the first and second as well, because,
So theoretically, so is this, so theoretically, so, I'm one of those people,
right,
right? And so I paid my bill for the first 2 quarters.
right.
Then the state comes back and says, oh, it's much higher.
Yeah, your
So
share is much higher.
Not only it's naturally higher, but then I'm also I gotta catch up.
Yes,
So does that mean when I come back to the first quarter of the next year, that my tax bill will actually be less?
Yeah.
Because you
Well-
don't have the catch up amount.
Yeah, so the way I like to tell people is.
So you can
the
actually calculate.
the
that.
impact on the 3rd and 4th quarter is essentially double your annual impact. So if you say, well, from quarter 2 to quarter 3, my tax bill went up 10%. It really went up 5% because it means you underpaid
The first 2
the
quarters.
first 2
first two.
quarters. So in theory, if everything stays the same, that it is hypothetically could mean that your tax bill annually won't go down, but quarterly would decrease from your 3rd and 4th. Starting the
So-
following year.
Yeah, so then the first quarter, instead of having that 10%, I'm gonna have that 5%.
right.
That's an important point.
It is,
Yeah.
and that also depends upon the output from the annual town meeting,
Right.
right?
Yeah, so always, yeah, and that is a really good point, and something that I forgot to mention. Something to look about is add all 4 payments together. And look at a year over year basis on the total annual payment. Not necessarily quarter to quarter, because there are fluctuations in there, so you want to look at the total pay.
And on this,
And that's on your tax bill, the total.
Yeah,
The total
it's
annual,
all that information's on your tax bill.
But I would think it'd be helpful for somebody to just give them an example of somebody who's like, you got whacked in third and fourth quarter. And then, because not only did your taxes go up, but you gotta pay for what you missed in the first two quarters. So that in the first quarter and second quarter of next year, your tax should go down barring any, whatever happens at town meeting. Can we just give an example of that? Because I think it's important. So you theoretically, you are, if you can make it through the third and fourth quarter,
Mhm.
it's not gonna be as bad. It's gonna be
The rest
half
of the
as
year.
bad
Mhm.
in the first and second quarters.
But yet also got to factor in, remember that these bills are based on a past year, January 1st, real estate assessment. So.
I got it.
Yeah, so for the person out there, the actual dollar decrease in your bill from quarter four of one year to quarter one of the next year is on a totally different real estate assessment basis.
Right,
And
Theory.
But I just-
Could
Theory,
happen
yeah.
again.
but I just.
yeah, it,
There is
yeah,
an important point. there
Yes, it is.
that People need to understand,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
barring, holding everything else
Right.
constant.
Yeah.
Theoretically, your first and second quarter,
next year.
tax rate should be
Yeah.
cut in
Or
half.
it's better to look at your
Or
yearly.
Take
tax
all
10%
4
down to
quarters.
5%.
quarters altogether.
Yeah.
Because the tax rate did go down.
Yes,
Yes.
So I don't know if people realize that the tax rate went down, thank goodness, due to some growth.
well, yeah,
Yes, it is.
because the overall, we went from
Value of the
970 to 1140.
So that,
Millions.
that helped thankfully, because the assessment was gonna happen, the valuation was
Yeah.
gonna happen anyway, so. We're sort of lucky in a way, even though people don't see it that way.
All right,
Yeah, we'll put something together. It's actually a really important point that hasn't been.
holding everything else constant.
All right. Big agenda. Is that conclude the slides?
Yeah, that concludes the slides. I don't have anything to discuss as far as investment policy.
All right,
We're unable to get that information
Yeah.
together with some.
so yeah, so we're past 12 already, but the one thing on investment, well, we need to address it coming up, because certainly, we know that for several years, we're in a very low interest rate environment. And so the return on the town's money, no matter what level of risk you took, was kind of compressed down near the 0 to 1% range that we're earning. But as interest rates are being pushed up by the Fed, we'll see that the opportunities to earn a higher rate of interest, if we accept the risk, is spreading out. So that, we have three categories at least that we could spread out to, in that we have the actual municipal funds, like free cash and so forth, that are invested strictly by Massachusetts' very stringent guidelines and requirements. You would have the kind of the middle of the road, things like CPC, that has a little bit more flexibility by law as to how it can be invested. And then you have the third group of trust funds, gift funds and so forth, that are not, we have them, we own them, but they're not really in the municipal money flow. And so the state gives you broader opportunities to invest that type of fund, so that we can look at, we need to review a policy that's, been several years ago, as to how we invest the money and what sort of return and risk
So
we can
we
accept.
talked about this, like back in May or June or something like that.
When this group started out, yes,
And I just remember that the returns were really low.
the returns have been low because,
Compared to what's available.
yeah. So, and that reflects the fact that way back when the board decided to pool all the money, which meant all of our money has to be invested at the least risk level, which also equates to the least return level.
Yeah,
All right,
okay,
so,
so I do remember that.
Yeah.
correctly.
so we'll look at that down the line here. All right. So, anything else, Diane?
Nope.
Peter?
Nope.
All right, so thanks Steve and the staff for putting a lot of work and effort, and Catherine, I'm sure we got the great notes going.
Thumbs up.
And also, you know, we, for the public, we're continuing with the owl here and learning the technology and the techniques and so forth. So bear with us on that, but we're looking to expand this to eventually other committees as well, as we, that's dependent upon the other committees, you know, getting the internal expertise so that we are not reliant on the staff members working extra hours, extra duties on this.
Perfect.
All right. So we have regular select board meeting
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Other things coming up is for the
In
public,
We're in
in person here. And other things coming up for the public is the continuing efforts on the master planning advisory committee. There's regular Wednesday evening and Thursday morning opportunities at the library to participate in the master planning process on the website. And the one other thing we really didn't cover here on the help available is kind of the ultimate help that we can provide is through Wish.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
so Peter's on the committee, so if you have an extreme circumstance, you can always come to the Wish committee that is allowed to provide cash grants for quite a wide, unlimited range of reasons.
It is.
Right, and that has its own phone number,
Yeah, it's
on the
website.
dialogue.
Yeah.
so all confidential as well.
All confidential.
All right,
Your attendees, their handout.
Do we, address?
says there,
I think we should just close that
you already
Yeah.
want to close out, all right. We have, you know,
They can
Next-
reach out
yeah.
to us,
on Tuesday.
emails,
email on Tuesday.
yeah, and Tuesday we have the comment section, all right. Very well, a motion,
Okay, so with nothing further to discuss, I'd like to close the Wenham Select Board Workshop on 1/20/23 at 12:25.
Second,
all in favor?
Clay says yes.
Buko says yes.
Cheeseman says yes, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very
This
much,
was,
everybody.
this was a lot of work that you guys did. It's a really good.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Okay.